Good morning, everybody. Happy Saturday, June 28th for everyone. It's really wonderful to see you all once again. Today we have Jeremy Saland with us. We also have my son who's in the next room watching his iPad, and I'm hoping only watching some of the childhood cartoons that I used to watch at this point in life. But if we have an unexpected guest, that's just life, and that's how we're going to roll here. It's really nice to see you all, and I'm so glad that we have Jeremy with us today. Again, the response has been terrific, and we have some exciting news coming up. Again, for those who are tuning in for the first time or seeing some of our recordings for the first time, it's really nice to meet you. My name is Kevin McAvey. I'm a husband, father of 3, a Bedford resident in NY-17, what will be one of the nation's most competitive congressional districts come November 2026. I am a lifelong New Yorker. I'm also a state healthcare policy consultant as one of the nation's leading healthcare consultancies. Every week, this is my one opportunity to shamelessly share pictures of what I'm doing with the rest of the time when I'm not at work. So thank you for bearing with me there. The purpose of these regular conversations that we're having on Saturdays and sometimes Saturday mornings and sometimes Thursday evenings is to really engage residents of our district, NY-17, in the political process, equipping our community with information about the policy issues impacting our families, households, and businesses to help us identify the best person to represent our interests in Washington at the end of next year. We're using these forums to discuss the issues, raise and discuss issues confronting all of us in NY-17 to support an informed and engaged constituency, foster community, and introduce the candidates. And we've been pretty successful at doing that so far. If you look at our YouTube page at Kevin for New York, you will find introductory interviews with Beth, with Mike Sachs, with Kate Conley, with Effie Phillips Staley, with Jessica Reinman, with Peter Chadsky, and after the next 45 minutes with Jeremy Saland. We'll also have John Sullivan closing out our first round of introductory interviews after the 4th of July. I also want to note something that's come up to my attention over the past couple of weeks. I've been notified that there's really nothing that I can do to prevent leaders, congressional leaders and national leaders in the Democratic Party from putting their thumbs on the scale of our local primaries and really starting to pick primary winners a year out from what I really think should be the people's primary. The Democratic Party is the people's party and has been historically for generations now. We should have a people's primary a year from now. And while they are totally correct that there's very little that I as an individual can do to prevent that, there's plenty that you can do to help that along. On the screen right now, we have 8 candidates who are either declared or pending potential declaration to be candidates to represent us in NY-17. And go up against Mike Lawler next November. If you find a candidate that you like, and I'd encourage you to get to know them all, I'd encourage you to make a donation of $20.26 to show your support, to make sure that we have a robust primary field heading into at least until the fall and the winter, so that everyone has the opportunity who is willing to make the commitment to run, to represent what they bring to our issues, our platform, and our district. Yesterday, I also want to note a couple of days ago, we had a great conversation with Anthony Wright, Executive Director of Families USA, and Elizabeth Benjamin, the VP of Health Initiatives for the Community Service Society of New York. The recording is on YouTube. We talked about the one big beautiful bill and its impact on New York. And I want to pull out a couple of statistics today just to remind you of what's at stake as this bill is likely going to be moving from the Senate back to the House for reconciliation and final votes here. The impact of this federal bill on New York State, up to 1.5 million New Yorkers could lose their health care coverage. About 1.2 million New Yorkers who were previously enrolled in Medicaid, our nation's health insurance for our lowest income individuals, seniors, individuals with disabilities, children and adults. Up to 1.2 million could lose coverage. Another 224,000 could lose coverage who presently depend upon the Essential Health Plan. The state itself, our state, could lose up to $13.5 billion annually. Make no mistake, this bill that is presently being considered by both the House and the Senate, which Mr. Lawler was a deciding vote for, will disproportionately hurt New York. New York hospitals alone will lose $3.5 billion each year. And that's going to affect services and healthcare access and potentially costs for everyone in our state. I want to call out New York Healthcare for All New York has released a dashboard, and you could find the link at the bottom of the screen there. Over the past week, and really emphasizing these coverage losses for our district alone. In NY-17, over 25,000 could lose coverage just from the Medicaid losses, another 5,000 from Essential Health Plan losses. Our district could lose over $32 million in hospital annual funding losses. And for those who depend upon marketplace coverage, marketplace costs could increase up to $195 per month for a couple, an increase of 33%. There's other news that came out with this week as people are just starting to digest this very fast-moving bill. Georgetown University and the small business minority came out with a report that noted that 1 in 3 Medicaid and 1/3 of all people enrolled in Medicaid nationwide are connected to small businesses, whether they're small business owners, employees, children of those small business owners or employees, or other family members of owners or those employees. This includes approximately 11 million children with parents who are self-employed or who work with small businesses. Medicaid is increasingly supportive of particularly nascent small businesses, which ultimately wind up becoming mid-sized businesses and large businesses in this country, the lifeblood of our economy. Nationwide, 20% of small business owners, employees, and their children or other family members are covered by Medicaid. Large cuts to Medicaid that are moving through Congress right now will result in millions of people losing health coverage and becoming uninsured, which will threaten the health and economic security of a significant portion of our small business workforce. 1 in 5 small business owners, employees, and children or other family members are covered again by Medicaid nationwide. This bill is significant, has a disproportionate impact on New York, and as Mr. Lawler noted in a letter a week and a half ago to Speaker Johnson, we'll call it like the oopsie, I forgot to read the bill letter, it will disproportionately impact New York due to the language and definitions used. Our Congress people in New York, particularly our GOP Congress people who voted for this bill, clearly either did not understand what was in the bill or who do not understand our healthcare system. Again, this bill will disproportionately hurt New York. But I am so pleased to have today someone who's been standing up for just and right decisions, probably his entire career, from what I can tell. Jeremy Saland started his career in New York City's criminal justice system, serving as an assistant district attorney in the trial division of Robert Morgenthau's Manhattan District Attorney's Office before starting his own practice. As a founding member of Saland Law, Jeremy is a criminal defense attorney, a Title IX advisor representing students and faculty, a family court Article 8 order of protection lawyer, and a counsel to both adults and children facing sextortion. After serving as new Castle Town Prosecutor for 6 years, Jeremy was elected as a council member in 2015. He presently serves as Deputy Supervisor and served as Newcastle's acting supervisor during the height of the COVID pandemic. Jeremy has appeared over 600 times on television networks from CNN and NBC, Fox to NY-1, to share his experience on legal matters, including President Trump's trials and the Sean Combs RICO conspiracy case. Jeremy has lived in Newcastle since 2006, where he and his wife have raised their 3 sons. He's a Hudson Valley native from Poughkeepsie, the son of former Republican State Senator Steve Saland, a legislator who bucked his party to cast the deciding vote for marriage equality in New York State. And I am so happy to have him here today to get to meet you and share a little bit about his background and why he's considering running for New York 17's Democratic nomination. Jeremy, it's really nice to see you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
How are you?
Good. Busy like you. I don't have a kid watching cartoons now, but I've got a baseball game later. I've got a college kid sleeping in as they do on the weekends and an almost college kid sleeping in. So it's a quiet before the storm.
Yeah. How many kids do you have again?
3. I've got 3.
Okay. So I also have 3. And it's like that they told me to have kids. No one ever told me to have 3 kids, but
in such order too, a bang to a bang to a bang.
I know.
No rest.
Any tips for managing 3?
It gets better, and enjoy the moment. That's all I have to say. You may not realize it at the time that it's the best, but enjoy it. Enjoy it. There's other issues down the road, so enjoy the time.
Thank you. So Jeremy, it's like I'm assuming, like as you were growing up with your father, like being who he was, like you've been in the political world or on the edges of the political world for a long time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of my greatest experiences were not just driving with my father up to Albany, which really as a kid was just so much fun, but being in the chambers and learning about the assembly and learning about the state senate, because he served previously in the state assembly from 1980 until 2011 is how long he served, or 2012, end of 2011. But my father is a man of incredible integrity, and he was someone who would say to me, maybe not in these exact words, but you do things not because you can, you do them because you should. You do things not because they're easy, you do things because they're right. And you mentioned before about, Mike Lawler being the deciding vote that could really compromise healthcare and raise costs to New Yorkers and things like that. When you want to be the deciding vote for something, you want to be the deciding vote for something that helps people and actually stand up to those who don't want to, even if it costs you, which it cost my father, his career when he decided as a deciding vote for marriage equality. That's leadership. It's not doing things just to do them because that's what the bosses say, especially, again, to what you pointed out moments ago, if you don't read the bill and the legislation to understand what it's going to do to the people you claim to love and protect and want to help.
Yeah. I mean, I think we'll get to this as a small business owner. If an employee of yours, which I really do think our representatives are for us, if they're not doing the work, if they're not reading the material, well, it might be time for them to move on. But growing up in this household with a front row seat to politics, what did you learn through that process, and how have you seen things change over the years?
I look at what my father went through, and I'd be in that car sometimes as he was having these conversations, or he actually would speak to me about some things. Now, let's be realistic. I was still a young guy. They're not talking deep into the substance, but my father would tell stories about you would shake someone's hand and you knew that they were good to their word. It wasn't such this visceral, ugly partisanship. There was certainly disagreements, but there was ability to work together. My father actually was a guy who was a staunch conservative in terms of fiscal conservativeness. He was not necessarily a conservative socially, but he really made it clear that you have to work with the other people, because if you don't, you're not going to get anything done. And then the pendulum is going to go this, then that, then this, then that, step forward, step backwards, step forward, step backwards, or depending where you look at, always backwards. So, he was a man who would share these stories with me. I remember discussing things about the legislation for mandatory arrest for domestic violence cases would be, the Greenway a little bit, we didn't discuss at the time, but things that were really important. And my father was really good about explaining to us why he did things and explaining what he was doing. And we may have been his family, but that's the same message. You have to not talk down to people and tell them what to do or believe, but explain and share why you should be on my side. And this is what we're doing.
Yeah, that is so important. And I think it's getting lost in today's political discourse. We were talking with Peter Chatsky a couple of days ago about the need for communication and representation. Like like if you will be our representative for New York 17, representing an expansive district, like not everyone is going to agree with you on every issue, but hopefully you can be honest with us about what you were weighing when making a decision and then why you actually landed. And that seems to be like one of the lessons your father taught you.
Absolutely. And I just say very, very quickly,
Yeah.
for one big issue, I think for a lot of people, without jumping ahead of
Yeah.
ourselves, is you talk about the Second Amendment and
Mhm.
guns and access to guns, and there's concern about the proliferation of guns. And the answer is not attacking people who support the Second Amendment and saying that you're bad.
Yeah.
It's not saying that a sportsman should not be able to use and have a firearm, but at the same time, they have to understand, and probably many on both sides don't. But when there's legislation that's potentially going to go through Congress and the Senate and signed by the president, the Constitutional Concealed Carry
Mhm.
Act, that can allow someone from Virginia or California or Florida to bring that firearm concealed into the state of New York, which may limit the protections on school grounds for firearms. Yeah, you may be a proponent of the Second Amendment. You are not my enemy, but we
Mhm.
have to understand that this is not the intention. And do you want that to happen? There's a real conversation. People need to understand the issues of substance, not in little 30-second sound bites or 150 words on social media.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think we've started to grow accustomed to kind of trying to summarize extraordinarily complex, impactful topics in like these little tweets, and like sometimes it needs greater discourse. Oftentimes it needs
Oh,
greater
sure.
discourse and understanding. So like thinking about like digging into things. Like what drew you to the law and really kind of trying to understand how policies are made and trying to make them better?
I always envisioned myself pursuing public service in some capacity.
Mhm.
I always thought that I'd even come back to Dutchess County and Poughkeepsie, and whether my wife watches this or not, she said, "You can go to Poughkeepsie." And she's from New Jersey. I'm just not going with you. So that ended up not being so I halfway between Poughkeepsie, New Jersey. That's how Westchester
Yeah,
came to
yeah,
be. But I always envisioned, I said, if I'm going to law school and I'm going to
uh-huh.
become a lawyer, all I want to do was become a prosecutor. The same prosecutors that Trump is and the Republicans are assailing and attacking. That was my path. There is no better feeling than, granted subjectively,
Mhm.
but doing your job and doing your job to protect people and uphold the law. And there's discretion there. Not everyone deserves a slap down and a heavy hand. There's absolutely
Mhm.
people do need to be punished and others do not. But wearing that hat and now wearing the hat on the other side
Yeah.
is one of the most fulfilling things you can do when you see someone, whether they're a victim or someone who's accused, even wrongfully or again overzealously,
Mhm.
to say there's someone there to stand up for you and protect you. And that's really been something that grew from my father, even though he did not do that, but learning from him about doing what's right and doing not because you can, because you should. Um, that really theme has resonated with me, and it's the same thing I share with my children.
What was it like to work in Morgenthau's office?
It was really incredible. I sort of like to joke, but it's actually true, though meaning nothing,
Yeah.
is I was a handshake away from FDR. I was a handshake away from Churchill,
Yeah.
because Morgenthau, he shook their hand. So
Mhm.
I was one away. He knew his grandfather, who was the ambassador to the Ottoman Empire. So I was one
Mhm.
handshake away from that too.
Yeah.
It's pretty neat, but he was talk about a man of integrity and
Yeah,
no
working with history right
nonsense.
there.
He was incredible, and I knew him outside of the DA's office. I used to work with him involving his farm up in Dutchess County,
Mhm.
and just a man that really was inspirational. And he didn't care where you were in politics; he pursued it again subjectively because what
Mhm.
he believed was right, and you were not going to make him waver. That's
Yeah.
an incredible thing.
And then how did you transition from like working in that office to deciding like I'm going to put up my own shingle, which is a tremendous risk for anyone in any stage of their life?
Yeah, I had been practicing for 7 years as a prosecutor.
Mhm.
I had sort of segued from the violent street crime. I prosecuted to trial Hell's Angels for beating someone down with a bat. domestic violence, stabbing, attempted murder of a wife, and where his children saved them. And it was really terrific. And it was really terrific. I'm sorry, that's the right term. It was really inspiring. And it was something really fulfilling because you were doing what was right. But there's also a reality of living in New York, like it or not, meaning there's a financial reality. I had one child. We wanted to have another child. We moved to Westchester, and it was a difficult thing to do. My wife was starting her medical practice to be able to afford and live in New York with those means. And I said, I'm going to take the leap. And I did it. And after 6 months of working for someone else, I said, plunge. And it was the best professional decision I ever made.
Yeah.
Scary.
Scary.
But was really so grateful I could do it.
One of my best friends is an entrepreneur, and there are a few leaps that people take that I'm more in admiration of. So as you're kind of setting up your small business, what are the challenges that you faced in kind of setting up the business and succeeding as you have in New York?
Yeah, it was incredibly difficult initially because I may be a lawyer, but I might as well be a podiatrist doing cardiac issues. In other words, it's kind of like you and I are both lawyers. I probably don't know anything what you know, and you may not know what I know. It's different animals. Yeah. So you have to rely on other people, and it takes money and time. So it's incredibly difficult for people who want to get started. I didn't know the first thing about, when I say healthcare at the time, I was getting healthcare from the district attorney's office, and then through my wife, through her practice as a physician. Just arranging to pay your taxes and getting incorporated, and what type of formation should you be as a business enterprise. There needs to be more guidance out there, and guidance that is also affordable or even free. Because even to this day, I'm good at what I'm good. I know what I know, and I know what I don't know, and I still rely on those other people.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you the question now. So like we've gone through a little bit of your journey to bring you to this point. I want to ask you like what comes next. Before I do though, I want to note like your father is an admirable New York stalwart policymaker, Republican.
Not anymore. He actually is not. He left the Republican Party.
He did. When did he leave?
Probably 2-3. At least a couple of years ago, because of Trump. But I don't know if it was after the election, after his first election or not. But he has not joined the Democrats, but he is unaffiliated, unenrolled. Like not enrolled. I can't be that. I can't be them. They're not me.
So what is he, just out of curiosity? Do you have a sense for what he's looking for as an independent? Because I think that summarizes a lot of where most of the district is right now, looking for a different path and trying to find a better way forward.
Yeah, he's looking for someone who has compassion and common sense. Is not someone who is short-sighted. He realizes, like everyone else, his time here on this earth is limited. But he wants to leave this place far better, or at least have stability, which it doesn't have now. And he's looking for someone who's going to do that. And again, you could be, this is a lesson too we should all listen to. Being a Republican does not make you a bad person.
Nope.
Being a Democrat does not make you a good person.
Nope.
It's how you address the issues and how you look beyond yourself. That's really the answer. And we can disagree or agree, but he has taken that path. Like this, the way the country is going is the wrong way. So if that means electing Democrats, then we're going to elect Democrats. I'm talking from his perspective. It's not just about dollars and making the pig fatter. It's about doing what's right.
So are you the man who's going to help us to do what's right?
So would I be and will I be? Two separate questions. Let me be. Nothing but honesty is the right way to approach things. I'm a solo practitioner now. My former partner had run for district attorney in Manhattan in the primary. Obviously, she didn't win, and she's now a commissioner under Mayor Adams. I had associates before. Now I'm solo. I am completely solo, which in a way I'm thrilled because everything I do comes to me, and I build it myself. But at the same time, it's incredibly difficult. I can only have myself in so many places at once.
Only so many hours in the day.
Only so many hours a day, and I have responsibility to my family. First and foremost. So I'm in the process, and I've spoken with some people to help come to my firm to see how I can do what I want to do, and to the next point, do what I want to do going forward. But I have to be confident and comfortable that can happen and will happen. So that's number one. If I can get that squared away with my family and with my law firm, and I know that there's powers that be want to have this answer soon, and I respect that, but I can't change my path my family is first and making sure my firm is stable.
Yeah.
I hope that it will be without me taking the step to the side. That's number one. Number two, am I the right guy? Unequivocally. And I think if you're entering this race or any race and you can't say that, then you shouldn't be entering that race. But, my experience is really unparalleled in terms of my time in public service, my access to, or my exposure to, and involvement in government. And a lot of this starts at the local level. You don't just say, hey, I'm your congressman, I'm your senator, I'm your governor. You have to have that experience and have those relationships and understand how everything is made and done. And yes, I'm only in Newcastle, but we're a decent sized municipality that have the same issues as the others. Some are maybe not as exasperated and some are maybe more, but I've seen it. I've done it. I've lived it. And this has been something that I've been wanting to pursue, not for me, because I think that I can do something better. And I'll leave this one last piece here. One of the jokes that I routinely say, and I think it's a sincere joke, is that how many people who are politicians would ever go up before other people and say, I have done nothing. Well, I'm not saying I have done nothing, but I will say is you can't do anything on an island by yourself. We have done things, and we have you have to surround yourself with, like we have in our town, incredible town staff, people who know the law, people who want to work hard, people who administratively put things together, people that put you in the right place. You cannot be an island. We collectively can do a lot of things together, not one person. So whoever wins this primary, we collectively must help that person unseat Lawler or whomever that Republican candidate is, so that we collectively can be in a better place.
Absolutely. I think that whoever comes out of this primary process is a person that we all need to make sure wins next November. The stakes are too high. The control of Congress are the stakes, and many of our values are not currently being represented in the policies.
Yeah, no one should be. I don't think anyone is, but cannibalizing each other is not the answer.
Nope.
Whoever we is becomes I am going to run and win. That person needs to have all our support.
Absolutely. And I do want to kind of make a point here, and you don't have to comment on this, but personal point of privilege. I do not think that the power. I don't really believe that there should be the powers that be that determine anyone, and whether anyone should be a nominee a year out from an official primary. I also don't think that if there's ever an expectation that people should be able and willing to declare and commit their entire lives a year and a half out from a primary, you are only going to get individuals who are either independently wealthy or do not have to work every single day to bring home a living to support their families. My personal opinion for the Democratic Party, which is the People's Party. But Jeremy, a question for you is, when do you think you'll make a decision by?
Yeah, I had hoped to sooner rather than later, but I'm still not there yet. I can't tell you if I have to, for lack of a better term. By July, then I probably, we're days away. But I'd have to respectfully say no. The fall is more realistic for me. I have, again, last time, I won't go in circles. I have a family like everyone else. I have a career like everyone else, but I am in a unique situation as a solo practitioner. If I don't earn and I don't work, I can't live in Newcastle. I wouldn't live in the district.
I respect that. And so, but if you were going to throw your hat in the ring, which I know that you're actively considering, what would be the issues that would be of likely primary importance to you that you'd want to address?
Yeah, I think absolutely unequivocally, Kevin, the rule of law is to me number one, because everything stems from that. Meaning, if you do not adhere to the Constitution and you have, I'm going to be a little glib, you have bootlickers and you have, apple polishers, and we can go on, sycophants at all levels of government who are willing to do your bidding and look at the immediate instant gratification, you are going to fail everywhere and anywhere. You're never going to get back a woman's right to choose. You're not going to get back. You're going to be less safe with firearms. But taking that aside, because the law can go in a way we don't like it as long as it's followed, but attacking prosecutors, trying to reinvent birthright and just we heard from the Supreme Court. They didn't rule on the merits of the application or the executive order, but disallowing or limiting the lower court's ability for injunctions, and now we're sort of maybe possibly going the class action route. There are so many things that Alien Enemies Act. I may not like you, you may not like me, but you still have rights. And I'm going to stand up for those rights, because it's not just about you. And I'm not saying obviously you personally, you, the generic you, but I'm not going to send you to a prison in a country you don't belong. That's not how we work in this nation. And it's frightening to me that you have a Senate that's a majority Republican, a president who sees as far as what appears to be his bank account will allow him to say that I am going to put the people in the places I want, and I'm going to challenge the law that it's never been challenged before, and the Constitution has never been challenged before. And that could have incredible impacts. And if they're willing to do that, I would just say, if they're willing, one of the things I've said to people on the right, if we're willing to challenge birthright in the 14th Amendment and say that was never intended to go that far, then you know what? Let's do that for the Second Amendment. What's good for the goose is good for the gander, no?
Yeah.
So let's do that. But the bottom line is, you have to, you can push the law within the bounds of the law, but stripping it down and taking positions that are unheard of, unparalleled, and illegal, or at least I think so, some of them, is scary. It's scary. It's scary.
So I'm hearing protecting the rule of law. You've also mentioned over the course of our conversation the needs to really address consumer affordability and like the affordability crisis we have in our district. Is that right?
Right. So we did not ultimately succeed in Newcastle, and we spent a lot of time doing something what was called the form-based code. And the form-based code was very what's what I'm looking for. There was a lot of people that we had a lot of emotion, and it would allow for
what is the form?
It would allow for basically predetermined form in a predetermined code that would not require every time you came for a permit application to build housing that you would have to start from scratch each and every single time. You could kind of knowing in advance that this is the way it's set up. This is what's allowable. These are the certain things you could sort of choose from. And I'm really shrinking it down. It's a lot bigger conversation. But the reason why, and then we also required an enhanced amount of affordable housing, and affordable housing at different ranges. It shouldn't just be those who have the least amount, but you want to keep your working families here too, who are on the fringes financially, to be in Westchester. But there was pushback because there was a concern that theoretically, which would be true, that the municipality could build up to 1,000 units, and how could you house 1,000 units? How could our town have that? And fair or not, it didn't happen. But the principle remains. For me, there's two key issues. People need housing.
Yes,
and they need good housing, and they need reasonable, affordable housing. Number one. And why is that important for towns like Newcastle, where we have a great Chapua Central School District? Is you need to allow people to get access to education, because if you don't have access to education, you're not going anywhere. You need that to better your life, lift you up, have a career, have a future, have healthcare, put your kid in college if he or she wants to go there, or a trade school if that's their route. So it starts with housing and education. I think that's, at least from a personal rule of law for the government, and for us as individuals and as communities, housing and education.
Absolutely.
You have to equal that playing field.
Affordable housing, access to quality education, enforcing the rule of law. And you also mentioned kind of making it easier for small business owners in New York and nationally. Healthcare is also a pervasive concern. And I would just not say for the folks who are presently like sweating it out as Congressman Lawler is taking votes to potentially take away their healthcare coverage. Low-income workers in this country who depend upon it just to be able to access a doctor when they're sick. But folks who are purchasing private insurance on the health exchanges, as well as the rest of us. I mean, there are a few people I talk to that don't experience premium increases of 10% a year. And businesses, it's becoming a C-suite issue consistently, where the folks are starting to not be able to afford the healthcare cost increases that their employees have every single year.
Yeah, if I'm having difficulties, or if I'm concerned about it, and I fortunately, have built a practice, and my wife works, and granted we're two-family income, but if I'm worried about it and I'm complaining, what is it that someone who's far less off in terms of financial instability doing, and how are they going to afford it? going forward. I think that's a terribly frightening thing. And so on the same topic,
Mhm.
when we hear about like workfare, I'll use that term,
Mhm.
where you have to work if you're, able-bodied, and
Yeah.
who's the arbiter of that? I
Yes.
think in principle, that is something that we should consider.
Mhm.
And again, just because something is a Republican does not make it bad by
Mhm.
default. But you have to analyze it honestly
Mhm.
and really look at what that means
And
and
think about how
understand
it
the
works in
process.
practice.
Yes. So
Yeah.
sure, okay, that's a good suggestion. Let's listen to it. But
Mhm.
what does that mean? And
Mhm.
who's going to lose out? And then
Yeah.
where's that money going to come from? Then what are they going to do? And then what's that cost that you don't see that we as a community and as a municipality, pardon me, as a state and as a nation, what is that cost that we're going to bear
Mhm.
that you're not baking into it just because, oh, we've saved money because now that person has to work?
Yeah.
And do they have access to work? Look at some of these communities, not just in Westchester, but
Yeah.
above and beyond, in Rockland County and Putnam and Dutchess and
Yeah.
well beyond. They may not have access to the same jobs and careers that you would, closer to New York City.
Yeah. And right now, what is being put forward by Republicans and was voted for by Mr. Lawler is a very well-known way of burying eligible applicants in paperwork just so that they don't get access to health care under this kind of value signaling that everyone who's able-bodied should work in order to earn their health care. For me, I mean, to your point, I think that there are major operational problems with that. Like, why are you going to make it harder for people to get access if they're eligible? But also, I think that there's just this backwards thinking. For me, I think that everyone should be able to access a doctor when they're sick because I see that as a prerequisite to being a productive member of society. And I think that that's often getting lost in this conversation.
I agree with you. And these are the battles that we need to be leading with as a
Mhm.
Democratic Party. I think the Democratic Party, we look what's going on in New York City, and I'm not afraid to say it, and
Yeah.
people may disagree.
Mhm.
You can't let the most far-reaching on either party, although I
Mhm.
think it's absorbed the entirety of the Republican Party as MAGA,
Yes.
but you can't let the far sides of either party wag your dog.
Yes.
And it's a real problematic because there are moderate people like me
Mhm.
who stand for the same things as probably 90% of what the Democratic Party stands for. And we're never
Mhm.
going to have 100% agreement.
Mhm.
But you're not going to bring them to the table if you're alienating them and you are, this became almost a referendum on in Israel and Iran and
Mhm.
Palestine and Donald Trump. This is New York City. This is New
Yes.
York City. I mean,
Yes.
that's really not the issues here. It's not you ignore those issues.
Mhm.
But I'm not a democratic socialist,
Yeah.
and I don't think that New York 17 that message is going to win if you don't say jobs, healthcare, housing, education. You know what? Maybe you can save a little bit for your future and retirement, or if you have children for college, or if you're already retired, that you're not wondering how you're going to afford the next thing. That's what this party has to lead with. The umbrella and the tent can be big, but
Mhm.
not if the loudest voices that are now going to be painted as
Mhm.
Randami across, all swing districts by the Republican Party. That's a
Yes.
disservice, in my opinion. You know
I
what?
I
They should
completely
not be
agree.
wagging our dog. We should be standing up for what we believe in 100%, but we
Mhm.
got to get into office to do that. Democratic Socialists are not the answer. AOC is not winning this district.
I think that all of our candidates need to be focused on the kitchen table issues that every family in this district are facing and talking about and worried about every single night, as you've been talking to.
Yeah.
Affordability. How are we going to pay for everything to make sure that our family can sustain itself? Are our kids getting good education? If are we able to kind of stay in our house as we start to move towards retirement? Like, what is going on with the rule of law? And if those our neighbors are no longer protected by this rule of law, what does that mean? What does that mean for us? How can I sustain my small business in this state? And I think you've really talked and have personal
There's so much
experience.
anger,
Yeah.
Kevin. There's so much anger. Like I follow people from Poughkeepsie, like
Mhm.
on Facebook, friends, and
Mhm.
I'm just that's where I'm from this for that reason. But I see posts from people, and it's not a racial thing. It's not necessarily even a religious
Mhm.
thing or even a gender thing.
Mhm.
There's a frustration and anger that the Democratic Party, Democrats have left them,
Mhm.
we think of the Republicans as only white men.
Mhm.
There's a bigger base that's growing because people feel abandoned by the Democratic Party, and you're not winning them back. The people who are busting their chops every day, making a buck, they're not looking for handouts. They're not looking, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong to be getting assistance. They're doing their job, and they're doing what they were told they were supposed to do, and they feel failed. That's what we as a party, and certainly New York 17, have to get back to. We can still agree on all those other things too and push those other agendas, but you can't do it if you don't get into office.
I completely agree. And so as you're thinking about your next steps to represent these values, if people are interested in learning more about you or helping out or providing input to encourage you to potentially run, how can they get in touch with you?
So I am, for better or worse, easily findable online. I market my law firm, so it's jsaland at salandlaw.com. It's, you could just Google my name and I'll pop up on social media or my website, but that's probably the easiest way to find me. And then you might see me smiling or not on TV, but you can, or streaming, on CNN or local news, discussing whatever's happening. But in terms of actually communicating with me, shoot me an email.
And then, so maybe later this summer, this fall, we'll hear from you and you'll make a final call on whether you're able to get into the race. And I just so appreciate just even the consideration and the time in considering to run for a Democratic nomination in New York 17, one of the nation's most competitive districts in the country. It comes with great opportunity cost, and I think that that's not often acknowledged.
It does, and I'll leave with this and say, again, I'm confident that should I decide to run and I'm the decision by the voters, that I would take to task Mike Lawler or anyone else who sits in that seat. But I also want to say that none of us who are running or people who might plan on running could be egotistical about this, because it's so much bigger than any one of us. So whoever runs, we have to support each other and get it done and take back New York 17, no matter who it is. But let's hope by early fall that I can make that decision, fish or cut bait, as they say, and have everything I need in place. And if not, I'll be honest about it.
Yeah. Jeremy, it's been so wonderful talking to you. Thank you for taking the time on a Saturday morning.
Thank you. I got to go to baseball now. I got a baseball game in Yorktown.
Go for it. I'll talk to you soon.
Be well. Thank you so much.
Bye. And that was Jeremy. I'm so thankful that he was able to join us today. And I do want to re-emphasize that if we are expecting to have our nominee picked a year and a half out, not only from the primary, but from the general election, we are only going to get individuals who are have the financial wherewithal to give up so much of their life to make the commitment, because it is a tremendous commitment. This is no slight for those individuals who are making those sacrifices right now. And I know it's incredibly difficult, especially for many with young families in our district who are running. And I have great respect for them. But we cannot have party leadership start to anoint primary candidates as soon as a year out. Again, thank you all for taking the time to join today. We're going to talk with John Sullivan, who is making that commitment, who is trying to put his life on hold in order to make our lives in this district better. On Thursday, July 10th at 6 p.m., we'll talk to John Sullivan. That'll be a Thursday night, so make sure you get it booked or get the subscribe to the notify application button, whatever it is on YouTube. It's like, I don't know, down there. And I look forward to talking with him. As I also shared on last week on Peter Chatsky's conversation, I'm so pleased to be able to announce that we are going to do second round interviews with all of the candidates starting in August. It may bleed into early September, but every single candidate that we've talked to so far has committed to another conversation. These conversations will be a little bit different. This first round was about introductions, getting to know each candidate. The next round will be a little bit deeper and have some sharper edges. We're going to be asking each of the candidates to bring a topic that they feel is particularly important to Congressional District 17 in New York, and talk to me about it. What are the policy issues at play? What are the votes Congressman Lawler has made that are against our interests time and time again? And we're going to get into it. We're also going to talk about their path to viability. While I think this should be an open primary field, I think we really may need to make sure we have a an ultimate primary candidate who is well-rounded, and we'll talk to them about that. As always, I just so appreciate all of the notes, the thanks, the likes, the shares, everything online. This is my after work activity, and I really believe that we deserve to have a candidate that represents our values in the next election, and I'm so thankful to have all of your support. Again, this is Kevin McAvey, and I'll talk to you soon.